Welcome to Impact, where immigrants and Americans discuss America today. I'm your host, Pamela Anchang. On today's show, we will discuss a very sensitive topic, the immigrant accent. When does your accent become an issue? Here to discuss are Dr. Ora Imbaros, an awarded educator, journalist, life coach, and best-selling author. We also have Queen Uche Umieguku, founder of Uche Hair, Nigerian-born and highly respected hair extension and entrepreneur in Beverly Hills, California. We have Mrs. Kevan Gula, a licensed marriage, family, and child counselor specializing in the integration of psychotherapy and spirituality from a Baha'i perspective. We finally have Miss Kiana M. Williams, an audio engineer, editor, co-host, and producer of Feminist Magazine on KPFK Radio Pacifica in Los Angeles. She will bring us the American perspective. You certainly do not want to miss the show, so stay with us on Impact. I'm Pamela Anchang. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Dr. Ora, how are you doing?
I'm doing great now because I'm here with you guys.
Awesome. And the Queen is here, Queen Uche.
Yes.
How is the day?
Good. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And Mrs. Kevan Gela, my girl, how are you?
Doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. And not forgetting my own colleague right next to me, Miss Kiana Williams. How are you today?
Hi, good, thank you.
Nice to have you on the show. So, like we all already introduced the show, it's about bias and stereotypes, the immigrant accent, and when it becomes an issue. Dr. Ora, what's your observation?
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, I am teaching, and I'm teaching English. So I'm an immigrant who came to the United States 20 years ago, and I'm teaching American literature and British literature and advanced composition. I believe that your accent can be a problem if you think it is a problem. I mean, very many times people are going to really listen even more to you because you have an accent. So their ears are going to try to kind of like tune into your message.
Right.
I've always been asked, are you Brazilian? And I said, yes. And then somebody else said, are you Argentinian? I said, yes. And then, is that who I am? I really believe that, I'm international. I really don't believe, even if I was born in Romania and my last name is of Greek origin, I don't think I really so much relate to only one culture. So I look Brazilian, I speak, Spanish. So I think your accent can limit you to a certain culture, but can also be probably a sign that you are belonging to the world instead of just belonging to one country. So in my case, it was really not working against me. Actually, I think it worked for me.
I have to chime in on that. It's true. It can be an asset in some situations. However, I need to know, does anybody know anybody, or have you had to experience something similar to her, felt judged or stigmatized by your accent? Queen or Kevan? Let's start with the Queen. What's your experience?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, first, mine is good and mine is bad. I'm a businesswoman, and I have a lot of females come up to my store, and I had this incident of this lady. She came into my store. There was a misunderstanding, and when she wanted to talk to the owner or the supervisor, I walked in, and then once I started speaking, she thought she was going to intimidate me because of my accent. She's like, oh, you guys are coming from Africa, taking all the money.
There you go.
But for me, I still have people that see me in Beverly Hills and they think my accent is sexy.
That's true, right?
Yeah. And they say, come on, server. And they start speaking French to me automatically. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm from Nigeria, but I know a little bit of French. So it varies. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But mine is 90%. They think it's sexy for me. People want to chime in and talk to me and, see me like a unicorn. Yeah. Some people want to downgrade that. So it depends.
I did a study, and I'm also a teacher, by the way, by profession. I taught middle school in this country. And I have to tell you, it was kind of like your experience, Queen Uche. The kids, depending on the experience, some were receptive to my accent and some were not. So, Kevan, you're the psychotherapist, and we're not talking about psychotherapy, I know, but I can't help but defer to you for this question. And I read a study that said perceptions of sometimes a person's perception of another person's accent can influence the way they see the person. What do you say to
Well,
that?
you know, if we don't see the person, let's say the person is behind a telephone.
Yes.
And you're talking to them. And the only thing you have from them is not any body language, is not their face, is not their expression.
Yes.
All of that, which is really 75% of communication. So you only have their voice. And the accent becomes an impediment in you being able to understand them. Then that might turn into some kind of a frustration. And then you might then say, oh, I don't know. And I had that actually experience not too long ago. I was trying to pay for, because I teach online, I was trying to pay for the book that I had purchased for my students. And somehow, as it is the trend right now, maybe the person who's taking the money sits somewhere else in the world. And so they had some very, very strong accent. But that wasn't the problem. The problem, I could not understand what they were saying.
Right.
And then as a result, and I was paying a certain amount of money, I wanted to make sure that this transaction was going well. So that was an issue. Another situation, completely the opposite. I call sometimes for, let's say, tech support for a company or something like that. And very often there are girls who sit in Philippines and they have an accent. And I asked them, I said, where are you? And they said, in Philippines. I said, I'm delighted to know that we are sharing the wealth of this world with everybody, and you are able to sit in your own country with your support, with the loving parents and the family around you, and you are getting paid from the United States. And this is the way we need to look at the world. I think that for us to be able to have a diverse world but yet unified. So unity in diversity, we can arrange. So I would say accent we should choose to say if a person has an accent, that means that person speaks more than one language.
Yes.
And that's the way we should see it.
That's true. So the question is, who here has ever had to do some tongue twisting to accommodate, say, a natural-born American in order to kind of sound somewhat American? Have any of you had to twist your tongues and then somewhere along the line you just end up with no accent? It's neither your indigenous accent from your home country nor American. Because I have, maybe in trying to, like you said, someone's talking to you and you don't think they understand you. And so you try to sound, because I've heard it. I've heard in grocery stores. Have you heard someone do that? Hey, if this is your first time visiting TIMTV channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button here below and ring the notification bell so you will be notified when we post new content.
No, I don't. I'm going to sound myself all day because I think that's what I want to sound like, and it's foreign. People want to get to, people want to, when I open my mouth and they want to maybe see me speaking French or something else, and then I have an international. I'm like, oh, where are you from? This set up a conversation. So I want to be me. I don't want to change.
Yes.
My kids even tell me, oh, it's the. It's not the. When I'm teaching them more. And they try to
So you sound
me.
yourself regardless of how it's perceived, how it's received.
Yeah.
Kevin, what is it that makes some people want to adjust? Like in the case of the story that we read from the New York Times article, she was feeling down on herself. She would pronounce Joseph as opposed to Joseph. And in her country, of course, that was not an issue. But here it's an issue. And there's a lot of people who want to adjust.
I think, first of all, we have each an approach to perfection.
Yes.
Right.
And there is nobody who's perfect. And the fact that as human beings, we think, but also we can think about what we think. And then if we choose to think and focus on people's shortcomings, I think there's going to be plenty we can find in everybody. The way they look, the way they sound, the way they walk. And I really think that we need to come to understand that God has given us the ability to think and also to think about how we think and then
Yes.
choose the right way to think.
Yes.
And I think look for the positive in each other. And in that way, everybody will come across as good. But if we choose to look at the negative, there's going to be plenty to find faults with everybody. So they will be miserable.
Well, can we deny the fact, though, that that's wishful thinking, and it's a beautiful thought. However, can we deny the fact that, for example, in today's climate of immigration, I'm sure there's a lot of people right now in certain environments that would not want to be identified because your accent sometimes gives you away. So if you come from a country that's stigmatized in any way, you wouldn't want to be saying Joseph as opposed to Joseph, would you? So I guess the question is there a sense that if you're perceived as European, you really get more of a pass? Do you think so, Queen Uche? What do you think?
Well, I think if you're sounding like, to me, everything boils down to like maybe it's a phone conversation. You pick up a phone to pay your bill, and then somebody is like, "Oh, excuse me, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Can you hear me?" I'm like, "I can hear you very loud and clear," because the phone is not disconnecting. You're probably trying to change the subject because you can't. Maybe my accent is thick, or you're trying to mock me. Who knows? But like I said, I still sound like the way I want.
Well,
to
you're
sound.
beautiful. I'm sure everybody want to talk to you, but for those who are not so, and everybody's beautiful, but I'm your queen. You're the face of
Right.
Nigeria, Miss Africa world. So your standards are a little different. It's true, though. There is something. I'm sure Kevin or maybe Dr. Ora can maybe testify based on what you do for a living. People do discriminate based on even looks.
Right.
So accent is not one of those things. We discriminate on age, how people look, people wear, how much people
Complexion.
weigh, if they're lighter, darker. So we cannot pretend that this accent topic is not a valid topic. All right.
Like when it's coming down, I think, to names.
Names.
I mean, I really believe always when I'm looking at my students' names, it's like I'm asking, I'm like, is Jesus or Jesus?
There you go.
Because now I really don't know. I mean, there are differences. Maybe he is from a Latin country, but he wants to be called, in the American way. And I always say, well, it's like Michael Jackson is going to go or was going, to Europe, and he was like Michel Jackson. I'm like, well, I mean, depends. Probably you are going to pick up the name, of that country where you are going to perform. And I'm not going to ask, the guys in, France, to pronounce his name. Michael Jackson, yes, he's known all over the world, but,
Exactly.
it's Michel Jackson or Miguel, in Spain. So I think when it's coming down to names, it's just a little bit different.
Yes.
I remember when I was called Aura, Aura, Laura, Aura, Ura, Aurora. I mean, there were, an array of, for my names. And I was laughing. I'm like, for sure they're calling my name. And then my last name could not even be pronounced, even if it's Imbarus. And I'm like, well, honey, the way you spell it, that's the way you pronounce it. You don't have to twist your tongue here. But I mean, in my case, it's just another laughable situation, and
That's very interesting perspective. What about in the employer-employee scenario? Because some people have lost jobs as a result of the accent, and the employer can say, I lost business because of your accent.
I do believe like it's coming down to sales as an example. If you're going to have customers who really don't understand you, then probably you're going to lose some money for the company. And I agree with that. Now, should you go back to school? Well, it depends. I mean, I think that when you came here, and let's say you're generation 1.5, okay, your parents, you do speak your native language at home, but also you are going to go to an American institution. Probably the more you practice your native tongue, you're never going to get rid of your accent. True. So if that's going to be the case, it's probably going to be a challenge. Now, depends also how old you were when you came to the United States. Like, if your vocal cords are already formed,
So now we're
You
going
know,
into.
now you're going to deal with that for the rest of your life.
So you're saying that for us it's done. Whatever it is, it is.
Well, you can have a lot, you can have a coach, a speech coach,
Yes.
that actually is going to probably diminish your accent. Like all the Hollywood stars are going to go and pick up accents, for
Yes.
different roles they're playing.
Absolutely. That's true.
So I think, people pay money, to come up with accents. And then we are paying money to get rid of our accents.
That is true. So, Queen, let me do a last round here. Queen, do you adjust your accent to accommodate your clients so you don't lose business? Because we're talking about that relationship of making money.
Well, for me, like I still stand with what I stand. I'm gonna say about my accent all
You're pretty
day.
stubborn.
I think it's sexy if you ask me. But I'm gonna give you the best customer service.
Yes.
But I will still stand by my
Have you lost
accent.
business? Would somebody walk away because they just couldn't handle it?
No, they try to have a conversation. Oh, where you from? How long have you been here? And you know what? The fun thing is that sometimes they were like, you don't even have an accent. I'm like, really? Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Especially if you think you do, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just based on what she said, if someone says you don't have an accent, is it then, Kevan, is it a self-consciousness? Is it that sometimes we perceive discrimination when there is none? Or are there instances where there's a clear-cut bias?
I'm kind of old,
Well, we're benefiting from your experience.
Exactly.
So I don't remember. I've been so long here, and I don't remember really any negative memories from Americans as a whole.
Yes.
I see that Europeans a lot more maybe critical of one's accent or nationality. I always thought the Americans were a lot more open, a lot more wide embrace in accommodating diversity of people. And then maybe also because of being a Baha'i in the Baha'i community, I have always had the pleasure of support from all different people who had this mindset. The diversity is good, adds to the beauty of the whole garden, So I'm not a very classical or typical recipient of the prejudices or some kind of a biases towards accent. If anything, on the other side, I was the beneficiary of a lot of goodwill. But ultimately, I really think that there is some degree that we influence our own interaction with people.
Absolutely.
We are not just in a box where others who are communing with us, they can decide. So a smile, being tolerant, being looking for something positive in others, these are all the forces that we have within ourselves to really love the person that we talk. I'm sure there are occasions where the person is so frustrated or something upset or whatever it is, or the police guy comes, whatever, I don't know. They might look at something. But altogether, my experience really has been positive. Yeah. I am very, very much
that's wonderful.
Really applauding the American spirit of welcoming the strangers.
Typically, the experience has been good. I think it just depends on the individual. If someone's going to be bigoted, they're going to be bigoted regardless of your accent.
Right.
So we're going to shut it down here, or are you dying to say something?
Yes, and I really agree with you because, in Europe, if you have an accent, I mean, people will look at you, scrutinize you way more than they will in the United States.
Wow.
I mean, in Germany, I've stayed there for a little bit, longer. And so in Germany, no matter what, you're always going to be an Auslander, an immigrant.
Right.
And you're always going to have an accent, and people will look down on you because you have an accent. Whenever I go back to my native country, Romania, when I'm speaking my native language, Romanian, people say, you have an accent. And I'm like, that's perfect. Because now all of a sudden I pick up the intonation, of the English language. And probably I do have an accent right now in Romanian. So I guess, there are no accents. And I'm into the Romglish part.
Romglish.
Romanian
what would yours be,
English.
Queen Uche? Romglish?
I mean, and one more thing. I think that maybe sometimes that's based on some people that are ignorant.
True.
Sometimes they think that people with accent are
inferior or uneducated.
Uneducated.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
then you're like, oh, did you go to college? My client
Yes.
is asking me. I'm
Yes.
like, hell yeah. I went to law school from there, I did political science. I went to law school briefly. I couldn't
You had other-
I want to do fashion.
Yes, you had other things that
badly,
you
yeah.
love to
So,
do.
like, oh, law school, oh, political science. I'm like, yeah, but because I have an accent, you think I just left from, like, maybe kindergarten. So it
And
varies.
on that note,
I want to separate, by the way, accent from pronunciation.
Yes.
Because, somebody wants to say iCloud and they say iCloud.
Yes.
So that makes it difficult to understand what
Yes.
they're saying. So I would not, I think they should learn to pronounce it. If they're speaking with a British, accent,
Absolutely.
they should make sure that people understand. That's a loving approach to it, in communication.
No.
You want other
No,
people
no.
to understand you.
so we're going to have to wrap it up here because this topic we're going to have to discuss after the show. It's towards the end, it was getting more and more interesting, but we have to bring in another perspective here. I need Miss Kiana Williams to chime in. And this is Impact on KPFK 90.7 FM. And I'm your host, Pamela Anchang. Thank you for watching. We've come to the end of our show, Impact. If you love the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, TIMTV or Immigrant Magazine. See you next time for another edition of Impact with Pamela Anchang.